some of them were.
Come on, trying to get it right. There we go. Can't even see that up there. Here, we'll just do this first.
Stand around in there and hope that they can survive the deer long enough to.
Yeah, exactly.
Go look and see what it says. Now we can see it, and that's all there is. There's the agenda for tonight.
No, it's nice.
Yeah, it's not a
On that water.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's really light, because
It's been nice.
last week was spring break for one second.
Right, exactly.
So, people, planning and zoning
Yes,
applications.
they just go, not there.
Next meeting.
I am. Cassie, nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. So you, oh, that's right, you do all the water water stuff, that's right.
Not me solely.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
part of the association, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when I was up in Long Lake, they were talking about, water association, carbon management stuff.
Exactly.
There you go.
James.
Thanks. So shout out to your. Almost a year ago, we had
Sorry about that. I can do that unless we have to.
Well, good, I'm glad to hear that, I will pass that on, thank you.
I stopped by and gave a big one, but it was one of those moments where you just go.
Exactly.
Weird, it was some weird.
Hey, Gene, how you doing? Oh, absolutely. So I was hired as the first full-time chief back in 2001. I just actually had my work on the 20th, so yeah.
So did you get a check in the mail a week or so ago?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I was just going through our records and going,
Absolutely.
oh, it's not here. So
Well, how come you guys didn't file the satisfaction last time?
I have no
I
idea. if
mean,
it
that
was-
caused us problems.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how that happened. All I
Yeah,
know is the
well,
check came in.
I get it, but geez, I appreciate you catching it. I don't wanna double pay for something.
No, well, it was your money, so.
I just-
Yeah, I don't know what happened. That was 2 years ago, and I don't know if,
Whose responsibility is that when something like that's paid to the city? Is that the lawyers, or is that the cities, or whose is that?
but do you remember how you paid it last time? Did you bring it in person, or did you just mail it?
Probably paid it in person, because we ran into the same issue when we were buying the house next door.
Yeah, and so
All right, welcome to the Monday, March 28th, 2022, Orono City Council meeting. Note, all council members are present except Council Member Crosby and Council Member Seals tonight. We always start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I invite you to stand and face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks for that. Next on the item is the approval of the agenda, where in one vote we will approve everything that we have on the consent agenda. And if there's something you want taken off, just raise your hand and I will be glad to take it off the agenda to discuss. Would anybody like to try the consent agenda tonight? Eric? Motion to approve. Okay, so what we've got on the consent agenda tonight is 1, the city council meeting minutes of March 14th. Number 2, council work session minutes of March 14th. Number 3, claims and bills. Number 4, approval of rental license. Number 5, appointment of 2022 seasonal employees. And 6, personnel matter. Is there any items anybody would like to have off of the consent agenda tonight? You see no objections, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Tom Johnson, all in favor say aye. Aye. Note that passes 3-0. Okay, next we have public comments, where if you want to have something to say that's not on the agenda tonight, you got up to 5 minutes, come and state your name and address for the record.
You're on the agenda tonight.
Two and a half.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Hello, Council. Cassandra Ordway. My address is 1145 County Road 6. And I'd love to let you know about 3 wonderful announcements tonight, all pertaining to Orono. So the first one is birthday. Long Lake Waters Association is hosting a great event on Saturday, April 23rd in the afternoon at Summit Park. And I do have brochures. Anna in your office has kindly put it on the listserv, and we have extra copies in your office. But it's going to be a great event. It's community oriented. It's open to all. It's free. We're collaborating with some great partners. And just to give you a quick update, some of the things that are going to go on during that day for activities or for all families, young and old, will be the Walk for Water, where we'll do a nice environmental walk along East Long Lake Trail and do any cleanup along that needs to be done. Hopefully that'll be a great community gathering. There'll be some aquatic invasive species education. The DNR is helping us with a great professional partner and person that's coming for that. The Minnetonka Art Center is going to come and do a really cool hands-on art project for any kids and families that want to participate in that. Friends of Wolfsveld Woods is going to have a representative there for their programs and walks and environmental education that they have going on in Wolfsveld Woods throughout the summer. There'll be a scavenger hunt, and then lastly there'll be this wonderful local renowned chef, Alan Burgo, and he is a forager and has just won a very prestigious award and has just come out with a really cool book called Forage, and he's going to identify some plants and interesting things along the trail and in our backyards that we can consume that are edibles. So things that I want to make sure is that people RSVP so we can count on numbers and make sure that parking is taken care of and that we have enough tables and spread out in space, so that's important. And also that we're planning for the ice to go out before then, so that'll be really helpful in some warm weather. But that's birthday, and I hope the council will participate in that. The second announcement I wanted to make was Waterfront Restoration, which is a local company, was awarded a grant from Hennepin County, and they have been approved for Hennepin County's ambassador pilot program that is going to help monitor the boat launch down on Long Lake. So they will have a presence there on Saturdays and Sundays to provide education, to help sure that people are cleaning their boats either before they enter the lake or when they exit the lake, to make sure there's some AIS education, and also if anyone's have any information about the washing station there. It just would be a really great opportunity to have somebody there and help anyone who's coming on that doesn't live in the area, that understands best practices for water stewardship. And again, that is through Hennepin County. They will be there for 6 hours a day, and again on Saturday and Sunday. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was that Long Lake Waters Association is also a partner with Hennepin County, and they have been wonderful and picked out Long Lake specifically to be part of their pilot program for a new initiative they are starting called the Lake Pledge. And it is an online, fun game, interactive, family-oriented, that helps families understand the best practices for water stewardship and what you can do if you live near the lake or on the lake or participate in the lake or like to swim in the lake. It's really meant to be just a really fun learning tool that people can take advantage of, and we're hoping that we will spread the word and make sure that there's lots of participation on that new program, so Hennepin County expands it throughout the county for other leagues to participate next year. So, any questions? Great.
Just one quick one for me. If you haven't already, you happen to help publish some listings on the website.
Okay, great.
I know we're doing that.
Yeah, I'll send them to Anna. Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, well, that'll bring us to our presentation of the evening. Chief Van L. from the Long Lake Fire Department annual report.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come to you tonight and go through what happened in 2021 for the Long Lake Fire Department. So, let me flip the slide. So our mission statement has been the same. We can just cruise through some of these. The vision statement has not changed either, and the value is also the same. All right, so let's go to the next one. So leadership, we did some promotions this past year. So Shane Gardner was promoted to assistant chief, and then also we have battalion chief and Chris Adams. Both those were recent promotions. One that's not on here that was just we just did this last couple of probably about a month ago was Ted Wojcik. He was a lieutenant down at Station 2 for us. So, next slide. Our org chart has not changed. Go to the next one. Current membership. So right now we have 45 active current members, which is actually 6 more than we had at the end of last year, or 2020, I should say, which is pretty good. We'll go through here in just a bit how many new probationary firefighters we have on the slide. So we'll flip to the next one. So this kind of shows years of service. So we're a young department. We average about 8 years of service. 24 members currently have 0 to 5 years. And then we kind of go up from there. 6 to 10 is 8, 11 to 15 is 7, 16 to 20 is 4. Nobody kind of in that 20 to 30 range because we had some retirements, and then we've got a couple above 30. So our oldest is Kelly Shaughnessy with 45 and a half years on the department, and we have another one, Tom Aldridge, who has, I think, 33 years on coming up here, so this year. So some of the older guys. So the next one. We did have one firefighter retire last year, John Hall, retired for the Long Lake Fire Department. He was an assistant chief, Orono resident, one of the original Station 2 members. When you guys brought on Station 2 back in, I think it was 03, 02, somewhere in there, I think it was. He was on Excelsior and then transferred over to the Long Lake Fire Department. So our new probationary members, I talked about us being a young department. This is part of it. We have this list of new firefighters, some from other departments, and a couple that were on our department for about a year or two and then had to take off and resign and now come back. So we have a good group that's going through right now, starting from January on through Vanessa, or Veronica Vesting was the last one that we just hired. So. Members who came off probation in 2021, there was 5 of them. So our probationary period is anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. So they passed all their requirements, firefighter 1, firefighter 2, the EMR, EMT, the hazmat stuff, they went through all that. So, station facilities, you guys know them well. Obviously nothing's changed up at Station 1 or Station 2. You can flip to the next one. Flip to the next one on that. So 2021 emergency call activity. So for Orono, we did 285 calls last year in 2021. And to compare that to 2020, where calls were down, we had 270 calls in Orono in 2020. So obviously that accounts for in 21 just over 71% of the calls of the 400 calls. So 2021 had 400 calls. There's a breakdown there if anybody has any questions on those. Some of the ones like the good intent calls, those are our canceled fire alarms, or we get to a place and they actually don't have an issue. That kind of goes under that same category there. So you can see there, those have gone down. We work hard to try and get those down. We still send a duty officer to somebody's house if they have a fire alarm going off, just to kind of do some education on that. So if they have a smoke detector in a bad spot, or right outside the steam shower, which we've had recently, we try and get them to relocate that for us so we can call back to those. So, our auto aid and mutual aid. So auto aid given, we went 3 times on the same page for another fire department. Our auto aid received was 6. The mutual aid times, so that's mutual aid, how many times we went out to somebody else, that was 6, and then mutual aid received was another 6. So last year, we received 12 mutual aid calls, and we went on 9 mutual aid calls to other cities. So that's comparable to 2020. 2020 was 16 mutual aid calls where we went out. So our first unit on scene time for Orono was 8:59. Our overall average was 8:56. So in 2020, our average was 8:35, and for Orono it was 8:29. So a little bit higher this year. We did look at reducing some of our code calls down for especially the fire alarms. 99.9% of the fire alarms that we receive are really that. They're just more, somebody burned some popcorn or something along those lines, so we go routine typically to most of those, unless there's something else going on, so. Next one. And stop me if you have any questions. I know I'm kind of going through this kind of fast. Responders per incident, COVID had a big impact on this. We averaged 13.12 members per call, and just 12 and a half members during the day. We haven't seen 12 and a half members during the day on every call on average for a long, long time, probably since 2013 was the last time we saw that. So we did have more people obviously working from home, and they were actually responding to calls for our firefighters were responding to calls. So, and 45% of our calls kind of happen during the weekdays from that 6 in the morning until 6 at night. So that's been a fairly consistent number for us. So. Call hours per city. So Orono accounted for is about 67% of the call hours at 4,200 of the 6,200 that we had. And then in 2020, Orono was right at 3641. So those fluctuate depending on the types of calls that we have. If we have any big incidents, larger incidents, you know, that chew up a bunch of call hours. So that kind of moves back and forth. So the next one. So our training goals for 2021 this year, at the end of last year, we met as an officer group. The officers also talked to each one of their firefighters where they get an idea of what they want to learn or train on for the next year, and also some department goals. So these were the training goals that we voted on. Obviously, you see some of them up there, call-specific training, some pre-planned type stuff. The electrical vehicle was a big one that we're seeing quite a bit. So we actually have, and have contacted Tesla, and they've given us a whole bunch of information, and we're trying to get some vehicles out for us to take a look at on those too, because we're seeing more and more of those in the area. So.
Good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then these were the department goals that the members came up with. So formalizing an onboarding process, kind of adding some of the pre-plans and hazmat information that we have into our app called Active 911. To do some more drivers training. Last year we sent a group of individual firefighters up to the emergency vehicles course up in St. Cloud. We'll be trying to do that again this year. We typically look at the fall to do that. And then kind of doing some station duties and to try and get some more family and spousal environment or involvement. It was difficult with COVID because we kind of had to stay away, you know, as they were telling us to do that. And we lost a lot of that family environment at the fire station and during some of that stuff. So it was kind of a goal of all the firefighters to try and get that back. So we'll be doing more of that. Flip to the next one. So top responders at Station 1 in 2021. So Station 1, we do have individual station calls and all calls. So like a fire alarm in the evening, you know, up here in this area would just be a Station 1 page only. So the calls vary. Even though we had 400 calls, Station 1 was only paged to 293 of those. So that's single station page and their all calls for larger incidents. So and our top responders are listed. Tom Aldrich has been the top responder since I've been here. Always up in the 90%. It's nice that he's able to do that. He's a great operator for us. Mike Johnson is one of our newer firefighters from January of this past year or last year. He's up in the 75%, which is awesome. So Brian Gonzer and Caleb and Cody kind of round out the top 5 there. So we can go to the next one. So Station 2. Station 2 had 195 calls for service. That's what they were credited for. So again, that's a single station page or an all call for that station. And in 2021, obviously Chris Adams, Shane Gardner, Tom Davis was one of our newer ones that came out probation, so it was great to see him up there. Ted Wycheck and Shane Spinks are the top 5 there. So training attendance, Cody Farley is our Deputy Chief of Training, so he has 133 hours that he put in for training on Monday nights or weekends if we had a house burn. Matt Smiley, Ben Beach, Ryan Gonzer, and Chris Ray kind of round out those. Flip to the next one. Station 2, Ted Wycheck, Scott Spinks, Chris Adams, Tom Davis, again, one of our newer ones, and Shane Gardner kind of round out those. So here are some milestones, and we had some rather large ones last year. For 2021, obviously started with Kelly Shaughnessy, 45 years in the department back in July. We had kind of a celebration for him, and we invited some of the older retired firefighters back and had a little picnic on a Monday night for him and stuff. DJ Goldman, 20 years in December. That's a pretty big milestone. You don't see a lot of people reaching that 20-year milestone, so DJ's been a great person for the department. 10 years, Dave Rothstein, Eric Palmer, 10 years on the department, and the rest of them were 5, Ryan Austin, Josh Brady, Demetrius Few, Brian Frank, and Sean Rios. So. Calls by day of the week. This varies from year to year, and it depends on when we have a large storm that comes through, either with a windstorm that causes all the power line type calls or anything like that. This past year was Thursday. You can kind of go down the list. In 2020 it was actually Sunday. There's just kind of no real flow to that piece as to which days are going to be kind of our busiest. So that one I just like throwing up there, but there is no rhyme or reason as to, we're always busy on Monday nights or anything like that. So hit the next one. This one does. This one's pretty evident as we go through. Our peak season is, starts usually in June and starts ramping up in July and August, and then kind of comes back down. But typically our busier months are always in those couple of months time frame. So we did have a busy last fall. Obviously October was one of our busier months, and November, December, and January is carried into it. So we're already at 102 calls for service. We're not even through the first quarter here. So if we keep on this pace, obviously we'll be higher than the 400 calls that we had last year. So we really didn't have any team activities, as I was talking about, for 2021 due to COVID. We've started doing that again in 2022 here. We just hosted the firefighter boot hockey challenge, which we had a bunch of different fire departments out from around the area. This year we did not win first place, we took second place. The Mountain Fire Department actually beat us in the championship game, so exactly. It kind of goes back and forth. We're kind of 1 and 2 in those for the last couple of years. So, so this year we weren't lucky enough to get it past them. So, but we've got some other activities coming up for 2022, so it'll be fun to have. The next one. So here are the big save the dates. Obviously our big one that everybody's been asking about. Are we going to have the pancake breakfast again? Yes, we are. So that'll be May 1st. That's a Sunday. Coming up here, not too far away, actually, a little over a month away. So we've got our Memorial 5K. If anybody's interested in Run Walk, that's a good one on July 30th. That's the last Saturday in July. Our Fire Prevention Open House, that's the first Monday in October. And then we do the toy and food drive that the SPB hosts, and we have Santa there and all that sort of fun stuff. So please, if you can, put those on your calendars and make it out to them. That'd be awesome. We'd love to see everybody there. So thank you much. So just questions now.
Do you have any plans for the blood drives to come through?
So that is typically set up by the Orono Alliance. It's usually twice a year. So it should be coming soon. I'll double check with them what they've got coming up, and we'll try and get that out to everybody. So yeah. But yeah, we partner with the Lions. So one of the Lions members kind of sets everything up and then just calls me and say, hey, it's going to be on, in 2 weeks on this Tuesday. And it's like, perfect. So
Excellent, thank you. Well, thanks for the presentation. I don't have any really questions on what you did. But what I do, I've had a bunch of people reach out to me, and I think I forwarded some on to you and some on to Adam, maybe both of you at the same time, just in relationship to the bridges that are going to be coming down.
oh, absolutely.
The North Arm and the, what's the name of
Nuremberg.
the Nuremberg Bridge. They're both going to be going on at the same time. Just concerns with people between there and the times and being able to get there. Maybe you could just address that here, just because I know I've heard it too. But
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of right now that Station 2 would get there before Station 1 if we were all equal, going out from the start. But with the way the bridges are set up, Station 1 now will just be a minute or two more, I should say, than what Station 1 coming from, we have to come down Tonkawa, so we would go down Watertown, get onto Stubbs and kind of route down Tonkawa. So that's about a minute to 2 minutes, I think, is what we figured out when we were doing it. A little bit longer than the normal response time that would have been coming from Station 2. So Station 2 still will be responding. But yeah, it's,
And from what I understand, Hennepin County obviously knows that this would be an issue, but they've reached out to you and kind of gone through all that, so they understand and still think it's just fine, because our response time is well within the norms of what
Correct,
it
yeah,
should be. So-
exactly. It would have been nice, we talked to them originally about trying to at least leave one of the bridges open, and that just wasn't gonna work out for everybody involved, so. It wasn't the end of the world, obviously, we'd like to have, the quickest response times that we can, but this is still obviously well within the norms of what we have, so.
So if anybody is watching that has more questions, feel free to email me or city administrator Adam,
For myself, absolutely.
or a chief, or all three of us,
Yep.
or whoever will get it to the right people. I don't know if that's going out in our newsletter too, just as a FYI out in the neighborhood, so people are aware of that. And maybe even if it hasn't got printed up yet, just to make sure people are aware, and maybe just put the chief's email right on and see if you
Yeah.
have questions, email
Yeah,
the chief,
absolutely,
and-
yep.
and
And
so
then we get that link up from Hennepin County, I think they have a link for the whole project.
there's a lot of people who were kind of freaked out, who just didn't really understand what's going on, and so it's
Oh,
better
yeah.
to be able to get them the
Yeah, no,
information
I
and
completely
understand what's
understand,
going on,
yeah.
so.
Absolutely.
I just had a question. So you have 45 firefighters now.
Correct.
Do you include the probationary?
The probationary members are included in on that 45.
Okay.
We're kind of set for 50. We've never really been up to that 50 mark. I'm not sure that, is 50 really a magical number? I think it was just kind of set that you could have 30 at Station 1 and 20 at Station 2. There was really no, saying, no, it has to be 50 by that means, so.
Okay. And then, so for those firefighters, I think if I wrote it down right, 71% have less than 10 years?
Yeah, it's something real close to that, absolutely.
And then, because I've heard a little bit about this, so then is it at 10 years that the firefighters are vested?
Oh, so through the Relief Association, yes. So the way the Relief Association is set up, they are fully vested at 20 years and partially vested, 60% vested at 10 years, yeah.
And then is that the first percentage vesting? Is that
Correct.
10
yeah.
years?
Currently, that's the first percentage vested,
Okay, and
through
then
our
that's
vesting
60% at that point?
60%, yeah.
So I see, so you have a pretty, 71% of your force is less, is that pretty typical for a volunteer department?
It is. You don't see the people sticking around like I was talking about earlier, like DJ
Yeah,
at 20 and
20,
John Hall was right around 18, he got out, you see that kind of go, and then typically if somebody hits the 20, they end up going a lot farther than that, obviously, with, Tom Aldrich is in 33, and, Kelly is kind of the abnormality here, with 45 and a half, will be 46 in January, so, you don't see that much anymore, so. Just because some of that's, with the way the generation kind of moves in and out of the area, they kind of move with the jobs and get transferred. We've had knock on wood, we've been very lucky that we haven't had that. We haven't seen that for the last couple of years. But we did see somebody that they were renting down in the bar area of Orono, their rent went up 10% and they weren't able to then, stay in the area, and they couldn't find another spot that fit their budget timeline that would accept dogs, so he had to move on, so.
And so is that vesting period, set up by the Relief Association for the entire state, or?
It's actually per relief association, so that vesting can change. So the Long Lake Fire Relief Association can do some analysis of the funds that they have and the funding ratio that they have. And then they can present that from a board standpoint to the firefighters, which then also has to be presented to the city of Long Lake, because ultimately the city of Long Lake, because we're a municipal department, guarantees those pensions. So that's why the city would like to see the Relief Association stay at 110% funded, and rather than go below that, because if something were to happen, then they're on the hook kind of for the rest of the liability of that. So.
And then how does that stack up to other volunteer fire departments in the area as far as the vesting period?
So the vesting schedule is very similar to others in the area. There's one that went, I can't remember if it was full vesting at 5 years or full vesting at 10 years and partial vesting at 5 years. I think it was partial vesting at 5 and full at 10. So that's kind of the abnormality in the area. But typically that's a pretty standard vesting schedule that you see. So, but there has been talk about it in the area and across the state about doing something different to try and recruit and retain more firefighters.
Okay, morale, fire department, how is that? How is it
It's
going?
not too bad, it's not too bad. Obviously, they'd like to see this whole contract thing get taken care of, and, you know, we've talked about that a couple of times. You know, we just need some answers out of, you know, the city, Long Lake being one of them, to figure out what they wanna do, really. We know, you know, as we've had this conversation, Mayor, quite a bit, we know what Orono wants to do, and it's just kind of up to Long Lake now to kind of figure that out. And there's some animosity that they're putting kind of some of the other contracts in front of the fire contract, obviously, but that's not affecting the morale within the department, it just kind of overflows onto the individual council members over there. So,
Well, great job, chief.
Thank you.
Fire
I
department's
appreciate
doing a
that.
great job, we don't want them to be in limbo. You know.
It's not up to you, is it?
But we support them.
No, we appreciate that, and like I've said to the mayor, we appreciate all your guys' support, it's been fantastic, so thank you much, it really is.
So thank them for us.
I will do that, absolutely, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
All right, well, that'll bring us up to Ron and our finance report.
I don't have anything for you tonight, Mayor.
Okay. Jeremy's not here, so our community development report is done, Sora's not here. City administrator engineer report.
I really have nothing.
Okay, now we've got number 8, Long Lake Partnership Agreement for Carper Removal. Cassie again.
Twice in one night. So thank you, Mayor, thank you, council members, thank you, Adam, for putting us on the agenda for tonight, and Adam's gonna run the slides for me. As the packet suggested, I hope you all saw the proposal and the request for partnership and funding for this project. And again, thank you for allowing me to be part of the program tonight. So, next slide. So, I know many of you council members have been aware of the CAR project. It's been going on a few years and some of the initiations, but give you a quick background, just to bring you up to speed. The first project started in 2018, and basically that was an initiation to understand if there was an issue with carp within the lake. There was some anecdotal notes that people thought there's just so many carp and we have an issue and a problem, but we just really wanted to get some hard data and understand exactly what was going on. So Long Lake Waters Association with the City of Long Lake and Medina contracted with WSB and did an initial carp population study in 2018. And basically what we did is do some boat electrofishing, some carp were tagged. They were able to go around and figure out where within the lake they were located, and from those specific scientific data collection, they were able to come up with, WSB was able to come up with an estimated carp population, which at the time was quite alarming, and a very large number, 6 times what the state recommends as accurate or an appropriate threshold level for the number of fish within a water body. Basically, if you go over that, it's just too many, and it causes certain problems, primarily because of their feeding attributes of stirring up the settled nutrients within the water. The good news is, now we fast forward, and I'll show you in some slides going forward from here, that estimate has been readjusted with much more accurate numbers, and we're super positive that instead of being 6 times, it's at a much more manageable level at more like 2 times the limit. So the project has been able to become a little bit more realistic and smaller, which is really, really good news. So in addition, in 2018, because we got this initial carp best guess at that time, we thought it would be beneficial to do a winter seining, to remove some carp within that winter. Unfortunately, due to snags on the bottom, there were some debris in the lake. The commercial fishermen set up everything, they cut holes in the lake, they sent their submarines down with the nets, and unfortunately, they were unsuccessful because the nets were ripping, so they pulled everything up so that there wasn't a lot of wasted time and money. And we put everything on hold until those items were located in the lake, they were identified and removed, which was super helpful. And then we tried again in 2019. Again, the fishermen use those tagged fish to successfully figure out where they were aggregating in the lake, which is what carp do in the winter. They all sort of pool up into very large areas, and that's how the commercial fisherman is able to circle them with a net and then take them out. And everything seemed to be doing great, and I don't know if it was weather-related in 2019 or whether it was just an off year, but this carp seemed to be aggregating really well up in that sort of northeast corner, and they were tracking them for days, and then when they came out with their equipment and started cutting a hole in the ice, the fish just went and all dispersed. So again, in 2019, sadly, that attempt was unsuccessful. So fast forward to spring of 20, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and the partners of Long Lake Waters, Long Lake, and Medina took that specific population estimate along with the water data and the work that the Minnehaha Creek consistently does within the watershed and applied for a Bowser, Bureau of Water and Soil Resources grant, and they were successful, which was fantastic. And part of that grant, the primary purpose of it was to develop a roadmap for the whole watershed. So you know, the Long Lake Creek watershed consists of 7 lakes, 5 of which are impaired for water that does not meet state quality standards. So that grant was to help understand the whole watershed, both Medina, Long Lake, and Orono, come up with identifiable projects, an implementation plan, and sort of move forward from that. And part of that grant was to do some further studies on the carp to truly understand where they're moving. Are they staying in Long Lake? Are they moving up into Wolfsville? Are they coming from school and coming down into Long Lake? On and on. So that carp part of that project was conducted by Carp Solutions. They were hired through that grant. And some additional tags, you can see a picture of them there, rather than the larger tags that you have to track with radio telemetry. They're little small tags, and the beauty of that is you can put them in a lot more fish because they're cheaper, and you can track them solar. So if a fish crosses over solar panels, and 2 of them were put in Long Lake, actually 3 of them, excuse me, one south of the lake, one just south of Highway 12, and one up, heading up into Long Lake Creek. They put 3 solar panels there, and you can see from the data there, it was very interesting. Of the tagged fish, 131, most of them during the spring migration were trying to go up into that northeast corner, that wetland area, either to spawn within that wetland or get up over the spill, which they were not able to do. It doesn't appear that any fish were successful in getting actually up over that spill just south of County Road 6. And you can see some of those carp are moving downstream towards Tanager, and some of the carp in Tanager that have been tagged are moving up, but the numbers are quite a bit smaller. So it really gave a good indication of what the fish were doing in Long Lake and where they were moving, which was very successful for that summer study. Next one. So because of that, a couple things came out of those numbers. We were able to get funding through Long Lake Waters Association, thanks to generous donations of businesses and local residents and interested individuals. We set up 2 box nets, and box nets are a little different than other types of moving fish, but basically, I don't know if any of you saw them on the lake, they're quite interesting. The commercial fishermen, which in this case was Carp Solutions, for anyone who doesn't know, that's the organization out of the University of Minnesota, hosted or directed by Dr. Shimmick Bergier. And they have come up with a system where you lay the nets on the bottom of the lake, and they're connected to poles that are can be electronically triggered, and on the bottom is the solar panels again, so they can see when the fish are coming on and when they're located there. They bait the nets with 100 pounds of corn every night for about 6 or 7 nights. They track the fish, they see how many are there, and the largest combined population, they spring the net. They have to be really sneaky and careful. They have to sneak in at 2 o'clock in the morning. If they make any noise, the carp all disperse. If they have headlights, the carp disperse. They're super smart, very leery, crazy fish. But they did trigger them 3 times, and got 3 successful hauls, and that's the next. That's basically the data that I was telling you. So they bait them with corn, the antennas on the bottom, and they do the removal between 2 and 4 o'clock in the middle of the night because the fish are so leery. Next slide. And if you go back at them, you can see that would be a typical sort of catch they would get. They'd fill up an entire boat of very, very large fish in one haul. So quickly, the results. Very interestingly, they removed a little over 1,000 fish. There was no significant catch of bluegills or sunnies or crappies, which is always important to know, but primarily targeting the specific carp, mostly because we were baiting with corn and the other fish aren't interested in that. Interestingly, the carp were very large. Most of them were almost 10 pounds, which resulted in a large haul of a little under 11,000 pounds removed. And you can see primarily the numbers they used, the 40 tagged fish that they knew were tagged. 30 of them, 34 came from Long Lake, 3 from Tanager, 3 they're not sure of, but they're able to do a calculation in the University of Minnesota, and from that, they can come up with what they think is a very accurate population estimate. And as I mentioned before, this new population estimate is quite a bit lower than the original one from 2017. And that is significant and also very positive and really important news for carp management. The biomass that they removed, as I mentioned, about 1,000 fish, has now reduced the threshold down to 200 pounds per acre. And that is twice the safe limit. You want to have number of fish down to about 100 pounds, whether it's a large body of water or small, that's about the calculation ratio, 100 pounds per acre. So Carp Solutions is indicating that they need to remove an additional 2,900 carp. Would be a successful summer project. If we were able to do that, that would be the optimum level for restoring the lake and the water quality to a better threshold. Next slide. So Carp Solutions' approach is, as I mentioned, to reduce those fish. They would set up their nets and equipment in the stream on that north part where the carp are primarily going up to spawn. It's very time sensitive. They will reinstall the solar panels that will be tracking the fish. If they think they have a window of about 1 to 7 days probably, that will be what they have to monitor very closely. And we are hoping that the city of Orono will see the value of this important project and be interested in being a partner to help fund this. As I mentioned in the proposal that was sent to you, we've asked Carp Solutions to come up with 2 phases, primarily to understand how the project will progress, but also from a funding standpoint. So if they go in the early spring and they track the fish with the solar panels and they can see that the majority of the carp are going up in that run, they would suggest phase 1, and phase 1 would be set up the equipment and do an initial haul, which would give them enough information to prove success. They would say, yes, we got enough fish, we see more coming in, we think this is a value project to move on. If they set up the equipment and the haul wasn't as big, we would probably end phase 1, not move on to phase 2, and leave that project as is and reevaluate, look at the data, reevaluate it, see if that was something that needed to be done the following year. If Carp Solution does indicate that there has been great success and they would like to continue, leave the equipment up, and that second phase, phase 2, would be an additional 2 to 4 days of having men and women, fishermen in the creek, doing the work, removing the fish, that would be an additional price of $14,000. So phase 1 is just under 10, and phase 2 is just over 14, with a total of 23,904. Our request to the city is $5,000 contribution towards that project, and Long Lake Waters will match fund up to $12,000. The next slide. And I know so many of you have been involved in hearing about both Jane's report from Long Lake Waters last September after the carp project had been removed, but thought it'd be important just to reiterate the benefits, which are many for a carp biomass removal. It's an opportunity to manage and reduce the invasive species within the watershed, and not let that population get out of check. It is a great opportunity to improve water quality and clarity. It also is an activity that will lower the competition for our native fish and our aquatic plants. So once you remove the large aggressive carp, the native fish have a greater opportunity, the bluegills and the sunnies and whatnot, to thrive and flourish within the water. And the timing of something like this is somewhat important and critical because the data has been collected and we want to take advantage of the momentum that was started with that project. The money was well spent, and make sure that we use our most current and available science data. It is a great opportunity for a public-private partnership, which you all understand greatly. And I also think one of the things that is really interesting to note is that it could be a really important PR message for supporting the valuable community asset of both Long Lake and Orono, and for those cities to collaborate on that, which I think is a great message for our community. And also, as I mentioned, the phase 1 and phase 2, it's just interesting to note that if we do phase 1 and have to wait until phase 2, we would have that initial setup and equipment bringing in cost. Most of the cost, if we look at the actual numbers in Dr. Bergier's proposal for Carp Solution, is man hours and equipment. Other than that, it's a very little cost from the university. It's just covering their time and equipment. So there would be some cost saving by being able to proceed to both projects this summer, and also it would have a more quicker lasting, impactful results on the fish population. It's another benefit. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, provide you with more information, and again, thank you.
Yes.
I hope that was clear.
Yeah, no, I think it's very clear, and I appreciate you guys all, everything you do at Long Lake Waters. You know, I do think Orono as a community is definitely partnering with our neighbor cities already on the lakes through the watershed district and all the taxes we pay. You know, we've had this conversation before. I know Lake Minnetonka Association would love to have some money for all their bait treatments, but we tell them, you know, we already give a lot of money to the LMCD, all of our. And so they have our money through our residents, and so does the watershed. So I think it's, once you start getting into the water, I think you need to partner with the watershed. That's just my perspective. As a city, every Orono resident is already giving them money. They should be stepping up and doing all this stuff. Versus us giving more money from our residents to a particular lake, is then someone's gonna say, oh, I live in Tanager, I want some bait treatments. I got carp. I live on Maxwell, I live on North on, I live on Crystal Bay. You know, we're just starting to pick, you know, winners and losers. We had the Long Lake Rowing Crew come up here the other day as a nonprofit, and wanted to see if we could not, you know, give them their feedback for their application, because it didn't work, and they're a nonprofit, and we said, you know, when the school did their addition over here, you know, they wanted us to waive the fee for that, and I was supportive of that, but in the end we said, you know what, we just can't set a precedent to start picking out different places and different people and different nonprofits and to give money to. And I guess nothing I don't think has changed from that standpoint, from my standpoint, because it was just, you know, then people say, well, then why not me? And I think the water, once you get below, you know, the water line, that is where the watershed and LMCD, and we have a whole ton of money invested in those organizations that they should give some of that money and partner with you on the projects that affect the lakes that are in the watershed, for sure. And we'd be glad to support you in those letters and asks, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your perspective. I think that Minnehaha Creek Watershed District was a wonderful initiative partnership with Long Lake, Orono, Medina back in, I think Adam was in those city meetings in 2017, 2018. And at that time, they were addressing the 5 of the 7 impaired lakes, and that it was a really important initiative for them, and something that they were very interested in helping. And I think the positive thing that came out of those meetings was that initial grant that, or it wasn't grant, it was the original money that Long Lake Waters initiated and raised to do that first CART study to actually understand what was going on in the lake, was very helpful in Minnehaha Creek to be able to apply for that Bowser grant. And I think that grant was initiated to take both the CART money and also the CART data, and also the water analysis and water information that Minnehaha Creek continually monitors within our watershed, and come up with a roadmap and be able to initiate and identify projects. That report still is not out. I think it was supposed to be completed in 2021, so we're in this sort of limbo area where projects have not been specifically identified. They're still working on it. That roadmap, as they call it, was sort of looking at their new version of the balanced urban ecology, along with the water resources, along with the CART, along with projects that all the cities have lined up. And they, I don't want to speak for Minnehaha Creek, I'd like them to have a representative here, but my understanding is that they are specifically looking at very large municipality projects, primarily for stormwater management and large scale, what we call external loading, water that comes from sources outside the lake. So stormwater management, runoff.
And we do all that stuff. I think when we talked last time, we had that same conversation that we are definitely doing our part with all the stormwater management,
Right.
runoff.
And I think those talks are in process, and those projects certainly are being looked at and identified in the numbers. They're very large scale. They're $1, $2, $3 million projects that are in the scope of a project that Long Lake Water certainly could be a partner on it, but it wouldn't be something that we would be able to undertake equally, and those projects are extremely valuable, but equally valuable is the internal loading within the lake, to not ignore the many things that are going on in the lake, whether it's the hundreds of years that phosphorus and nitrogen have been in the lake. And I think carp has seriously been identified as one of the, and certainly excess population of carp is one of the strong drivers of poor water quality. And this is a very doable project. I would like to reiterate that the city, whether it's Long Lake, Medina, or Orono, is not giving to a nonprofit to Long Lake Waters. We are looking at a valuable resource within our community and spending some dollars, very small dollars, that would help support our water quality for a valuable asset that's within our community. And it gives you all an opportunity to partner with other cities. And I do understand that Minnehaha Creek is looking at larger projects, and think that.
And they have grants that they do too. And we'd be glad to be glad to support you on any letters of sign-offs for any grants that you apply to as well.
Mhm.
But I think we're just giving you direct money for the
Whatever.
nonprofit, your association, so is Lake Minnetonka Association, and they love a bunch of money too. And we've told them the same thing. They'd be the first in line to say, we want to start doing bay treatments, and we need some money, and where does it stop at that point? You know?
Well, I hope that I was clear in my message that you're not giving money to Long Lake Waters, that you're giving money to a project that is coming from the University of Minnesota, that's Carp Solutions. Long Lake Waters doesn't want to have money from the city and then turn it over to Carp Solutions. It would be more of a supporting a project from the University of Minnesota. It's not a Long Lake Waters nonprofit that you're giving
I
to.
appreciate that. No,
And I don't think that's the dispute. I mean, I think this is just a question about how does the city handle donation requests, regardless of who is going to. I think you've done a really good job articulating the need for it. But I agree with Denny in that, thank you for creating the Long Lake Water Association. You're bringing up a very legitimate concern, and you're doing a great job and putting a lot of effort into managing it. But as the city, we have other competing things like this that we say no to. So So, that is my same opinion. Whether it be the lids that we have, Carmen's Bay lids, they were here telling us about that, and the city doesn't contribute that, but it doesn't diminish the importance of what you're doing. When we're validating the importance of what you're doing, it's just not something the city's gonna fund for you because we're not doing that to other groups like yours.
And I would just reiterate that I think the city should pay attention to our water resources and put some effort in and give the community an impression that you are valuing not just Long Lake, but all the lakes within our district and the importance of those. And I,
What we do, and I would remind you, when you say that we are spending lots of money, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars on all the different infrastructure, water runoff issues and all the gullies and all the things that we do. That's what we do, that's our job. When it gets into the lake, if there's some lake issue, that's where all the other government agencies that siphon all the money from the rest of all of us, for those purposes, need to come into play and do their job.
I just have one question, and this is something that has been talked about many years ago, but if you could remind everybody.
sure.
It's just kind of a fascinating piece that just went over real quickly because it's been talked about before. But the net issue that you said that they would lower a net, and then it was getting caught up on things, not getting into the details of what went wrong out there, but how that works. I always found it kind of fascinating with the ice and the hole and.
So depending on where you are within our county, there's certain specific commercial fishermen, and I'm not sure if they operate differently, but the commercial fishermen that is required for our area, Orono, has a net that's extremely long, hundreds of feet long, and a submarine he comes out with very, very large equipment, big ice cutting machines, big machinery, first plows a road down the middle of the lake, and then identifies, because of the tagged carp, where the carp are aggregating, and he cuts a very large hole about the size of this chambers right here, and he sends the submarine down and he does a big loop, and it's dragging the net, it's dragging the net, it's dragging the net, and he's trying to encircle the carp, and then they manually, with the truck and a winch, pull that net in, and all the carp are inside it. That's a winter seine. It's very different than
Ideally, it's full of a lot of.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah, ideally, and that's a very different than a summer seine. A summer seine, because a summer seine is more of a net that lays on the bottom and then they trigger it, as opposed to.
That seems very effective.
Yeah, it's very man intensive for the summer and seine, and the scientists are coming out at 2, 3 in the morning. They have to bait it every single day. There's some equipment failure that if they trigger it and the whole net doesn't go all the way up, the fish can get out. But I think they're both very effective ways, and I think Carp Solutions at the University of Minnesota has perfected the summer seine. That's their most sought after technique.
We only need $5,000, so we just need to make 10 more calls for $500 each. And there's 3 people we can call when we're done at council meetings. You just never know.
Well, I really appreciate you. I would love to reach out to you and help us network to make those calls and those initiations, and who you think would be most valuable in supporting this. We have reached out to businesses, we have reached out to local residents, but I think, like I said before, I think the message to come from cities is equally important, and also because we have set up this partnership with Minnehaha Creek and the city. So that is something I value, helping me continue to move that forward, and I look to your expertise on who the best people are to contact.
Okay,
All right?
well, thank you
Great.
very
Thank
much
you.
for that.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
So, do we need a motion?
You would need a motion if you were going to adopt the resolution to fund the support that was asked, but you can make a motion to not fund it, or I don't think you need to make a motion at all if you don't want to.
Well, I'm not in favor of funding it, so I don't know if I should make a motion.
Just make a motion, yeah.
Just make a motion into, not funding the, Long Lake Partnership Agreement for carpool.
Second.
Councilman Finn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You support your cause?
Thank you.
All right, so that moves us to, Adam, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay, your council report. Councilman Finn.
We were talking about before the meeting, it was 1 year ago, and the ice was out.
Yeah, that's pretty
Last
solid.
year, this.
Yeah. And I think the official Lake Minnetonka ice update might have been the 31st or something, but this weekend, so. Year to year, how nature changes, but, with this discussion, and she does a really good job laying it out. And then Matt brought up, or both of you brought up the lids that have been created on Lake Minnetonka. I wonder if that's something that the people of Long Lake could get together and, just do kind of a different. But, I don't know, I just,
Weed and carpool, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But anyway, that's just something that, it's a different approach, I guess. And then, when the chief was here, I thought it was great, information, but then, like what you guys had told him, and reaffirmed, our commitment to the firefighters. I think that's huge, and support of public safety in general. I know public safety at all levels is, it's the most scrutinized it's ever been. But anyway, so it's always nice to give a shout out to them. They do a good job and do their thing. So anyway, that's what I got.
Councilman Johnson. All right, well, we got back from spring break, so all the kids are back, getting all their schedules back. It was kind of hard for everybody to get up this morning after having to sleep in and be warm all the time, or where they went, and chaotic schedules. I know Victoria came back, had a work trip with her family over the pond over there in Europe, and I got tested positive on coming back, so I had a lot of trouble coming back, so but she did get back okay, so there's definitely, you still have to take tests before you get back in, so it makes it, very complicated, that's for sure. What else do we have coming up here? Easter's coming up in about a month, so that's coming up pretty quick, just a few weeks. Our newsletter should be going out, when is that gonna go out? I think everything's in, right?
All articles were in. I know Nola was working on that today, putting it together, all the graphics and all that.
And that was a good idea, if timing works out. With
Yep,
getting
I've got
the bridge closures,
Yep.
getting that information pumped out.
Yeah, and who to call or reach out to for sure, because there's always people who are gonna be just shocked when it starts happening and they don't know anything about it. They don't know that kind of thing.
We don't know.
Right, exactly. That's about all I can think of right now, so. This will motion adjourned.
Sure tried his brain there.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.
And it's still like,
Yeah, it's